Welcome to today's tragedy, where we see how this prince's childhood feels like a bad reality show. After all the scolding and promotions, I swear his heart must be like a garden full of thorns. What an unusual childhood it was, with parents ignoring him and a brother who made him a stuttering pro. Who would believe this prince of the British Empire had such a childhood? Old Roy finally realized that the stutter was more emotional than medical. After a heart-to-heart talk, their relationship melted from doctor-patient awkwardness to the warmth of old friends. Soon, they were invited to a royal banquet where, according to tradition, the king should personally greet them. But upon arrival, they were greeted by Big Brother's lover. What a twist! So, York advised Big Brother that as king, he needs to take the international situation seriously and not prioritize personal feelings. But David was adamant about marrying next month. York rolled his eyes because this was not just about marriage, but about national dignity. In the heat of the argument, York's stutter intensified. His brother took the chance to mock him, making it too hilarious to bear. All those speech training sessions went down the drain like a ship lost at sea. He just wanted to help his brother. What's so wrong about that? Old Roy noticed he didn't stutter when cursing. Talk about a miracle. Subtitles. Old Roy encouraged him to vent his anger freely, so he poured out all the words he had kept bottled up inside, leaving no anger but only relief. It seems that compared to the wild freedom of the throne, he's better suited to be a king, and Old Roy couldn't resist sharing his little. Old Roy only wanted to motivate him to overcome his fears. Who knew it turned into a good intentions gone bad situation? York shouted what's the source of his fear, but deep down he already had the answer and stormed off. Little did he know, many nobles shared the same thoughts as Old Roy. That night, Minister Churchill dropped by, subtly expressing hopes for York to be king. What a quirky uncle. He wanted York to be king, which confused York even more, thinking, I don't want to be a mascot. This was all too confusing, and his inner turmoil was at an all-time high. However, he knew Hitler's ambitions were serious business, while David was wrapped up in romance, ignoring the nation's future. York felt speechless and went to talk to Big Brother again, but David's decision was set in stone. So, David announced his abdication, becoming the first king to give up the throne. Full of York felt like the world had crashed. Now, York could only reluctantly take over as king, filled with worries, but he had to face the challenge. On coronation day, faced with many ministers and the portraits of his ancestors, York felt the cardiac blow of pressure. His fear surged like a tide, even though he constantly reminded himself to confidently read the oath. It really was a test. Maybe the pressure would ease a little with so many supporters around. But just a few days later, there was another solemn coronation ceremony, and it would be broadcasted live nationwide. How would he face the audience then? In fact, he wasn't so terrified in front of his two daughters. Although he stumbled a bit, at least he managed to finish his story. The warmth of family was like the only safe haven in his life. Now that he was king, even his daughters had to behave properly at home, signaling the end of his safe. That night, York began to flip through his itinerary, and when he saw the coronation ceremony, he couldn't help but cry. His wife comforted him, but the responsibilities of a king were ultimately unavoidable, a true tragedy. The next morning, they went to Old Roy's house, where York sincerely apologized and revealed his fears. His greatest fear was embarrassing himself in front of the people, and who would have thought Old Roy admitted he was wrong too. But digging into the past was pointless. What mattered was how to help York through this tough spot. Old Roy encouraged him to stop living in the shadows of his childhood. The throne was ahead, and he could steer his own life. So York invited Old Roy to practice at the coronation church. It was a life or death attempt for his future. However, this decision made the bishop uneasy, and he started digging into Old Roy's background, discovering he was an unknown underground figure. York was shocked and confronted Old Roy, who honestly admitted he wasn't a doctor at all, just a wandering actor who had met too many soldiers wounded by war. He realized that they needed just a patient listener, a place to open up, and he was willing to take that role. Though old Roy couldn't provide proof of his abilities, he had indeed saved many lives. Yoke didn't believe him and felt the anger of being deceived, but it was too late now. He imagined embarrassing moments at the coronation, thinking he might become a laughingstock. What a terrifying future. In despair, he turned to see old Roy sitting on the throne, and Yoke exploded in anger, accusing him of desecrating royal authority. Faced with this particular situation, Yoke questioned whether old Roy was just playing a trick on him, but old Roy smoothly made him understand the true meaning of listening. He understood the meaning of trust and finally refused the bishop's suggestion to replace his doctor, walking into the coronation with determination. With old Roy's encouragement and training, Yoke successfully completed the coronation, and later the whole family watched the footage, praising his